find the devatas who are wealthy, strong, youthful, with tremendous influence in every respect, in a state of desperation. They have lost their power, their wealth, their service to the Lord, everything. And they are considered Ishwaras within this universe. Everyone, to some extent, is an Ishwara, a controller. The little insect, mosquito, is thinking, I am the controller of my wings. And when he's biting you and sucking your blood, he's thinking he is the controller of you. And actually, in his little way, he is. In fact, if one little germ of malaria is within his mouth, whoever you may be, whether you're the Prime Minister of India or the President of the United States, you'll be laying in a hospital bed, helplessly. Krishna's sense of humor. He can conquer anyone, even through a mosquito. What to speak of little bacteria, which are even smaller than mosquitoes. Little bacteria, he can conquer us. And yet we think we are great. Well, what is our greatness compared to the devatas, like Indra, Vayu, Chandra? These are powerful personalities who live for millions of years, who do not show disease or old age, who control not only a little household, but they control entire universal affairs in which everyone in the universe is dependent upon each and every one of them for our very sustenance of life. But even such controllers ultimately find themselves in helpless desperation. What is our position? So all of these great devatas, they approach Brahma. He tells them, you are all fools. Indra, you're so great, but you fail to respect your spiritual master. You fail to respect a great Brahmin. And because of that lack of proper culture, you have now lost everything. Now you should go to Vishwarupa. He's a very powerful Brahmin, and he will help you. Now Vishwarupa was junior to them in age. He was also a relative of their enemies, the Asuras. But here, the demigods had to really humble themselves and approach Vishwarupa and beg him for help. They had to convince him that even though we're senior to you in every way, because you have something that we don't have, you have knowledge and renunciation. Therefore, you can be our guru, our priest, and help us. Vishwarupa is teaching them a series of mantras called the Narayan Kavacha, which is meant to protect them from opposition and give them strength to overcome the obstacles that they're facing. As we're reading the Narayan Kavacha, it is very, very instructive to analyze what is the substance of these mantras. It is all turning sincerely to people superior to us to help us. That's all it is. In today's verse we read, may Sanat Kumar protect us from lusty desires. Why are they turning to Sanat Kumar? Because Sanat Kumar had conquered lusty desires. You cannot do it on your own. You need the help of someone who's done it. Isn't that the way the world is, even in our common life? Whatever we learn, we gain the very foundation of our learning from others. A person of culture never becomes proud because he knows whatever my abilities, whatever my inspiration, whatever my knowledge, whatever I have, it is so much dependent on other people who I've learned from. The materialistic people wants to take the credit for themselves, wants to hide the fact that they helplessly learn from others. Let us take Radhanath, for instance. He performed severe tapasyas along with Kumbhakarna and his sister, Suparnaga. Severe austerities to gain the blessings of Lord Brahma and later Lord Shiva. The powers they had was not their own. The powers they had were given to them by others. But as soon as they had them, they considered them my own and used them according to their own whims, without consideration of who has given them, without giving credit to who has given them. And ultimately, where is Brahma and Shiva getting their power to bless from? From Lord Narayana, Krishna. And yet Ravana, he was so deluded. He declared war against Ram. He belittled him as an ordinary human being. Why? Because of his lusty desires. He wanted to enjoy Sita, the consort of Ram, for his own purposes. Hiranyakashipu, he gained all his powers from Lord Brahma, then gave no credit to Lord Brahma, but considered himself the Lord of the universe. Culture, in any civilization, is very much resting upon giving credit and honor to our predecessors, to those who we have gained so much from. To try to make it appear that this is coming from me, this is my realization, this is my musical skill, or this is my academic skill, or this is my flower petal plucking skill. But actually, somebody didn't tell us how to pluck flowers. Krishna didn't give us the fingers to pluck and the eyes to see. What could we do? We cannot even pluck a single petal from a flower without the help of superior personalities, or to speak of anything else. Therefore we find great personalities humble themselves to give credit to others. False pride is simply a symbol of ignorance. And the more we try to take credit for what we do, the more we have to suffer. Why? Because in doing that, we are competing with God. We are trying to declare ourselves and protect our position of being forces, including time, that control us. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Ultimately, you lose everything. If you think yourself to control it, you will be very much in anxiety about that. But when we take shelter of Krishna, we're fearless. No anxiety if we really take shelter of Krishna. Because we understand that we are under his control. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitanam ego bhavanam yogadati kamam. There is one supreme being, and there are many, many, many subordinate beings who are always dependent on that one supreme. So here we find in these Narayana Kavacha prayers, for every aspect of life in which we need help, there is a mantra to beg for that help. Now, in modern society, to be a beggar is considered something very demoralizing. But in spiritual life, to be a beggar simply means to be honest. That's all. Sometimes people ask how to be humble. And in one sense, it's a very easy answer. Just be honest. That's all. If you want to be humble, just be honest. Honest about your position. Honest that if it's not for the sun, you cannot live. If it's not for the air, you cannot breathe. If it's not for so many people who have taught you so many things and given you so many gifts, you would be nowhere where you are today. If you're honest, you have to be humble. Because pride is simply dishonesty. So the demigods, they're being forced to be humble by chanting these prayers. They need help. And they're acknowledging and recognizing where their help is coming from. This is all important. To give credit where credit is due. It's like my dear friend John. He's a professional musician in New York City. And I'm not going to discuss the details of his music so much. But you will hear tonight. We'll be playing the nice flute, and another beautiful devotee from Russia will be playing violin, and they will give a special feature of transcendence to our Kirtan. We also have Gorlani, one of the most illustrious Kirtan and Bhajan singers in the world, and so many others. Anyways, when we were talking, John and myself, there was one very, very famous band in the 1960s. Very famous. They were making millions of dollars, and they had millions of young girls just practically fainting at their feet. Very famous. And they were invited to be on a television show. But they said, we want this person. These people are from England. So we want this one particular person who we learned so much from. Without him, we would not be what we are. He was kind of an older musician that nobody knew about in our generation, nobody even cared about. In fact, he was so exploited that he had no money, nothing. He was just poor and forgotten. They said, we don't want him. Nobody knows him. Who cares about him? So this rock and roll band said, if he's not on, we're not going on. We have to give credit where credit is due. He made us what we are. They stood up. This is a very worldly example. But it shows a certain type of integrity. And in the completely divine transcendental state we saw last night in the drama, Baladev Vidyabhushan was one of the greatest scholars that ever lived. But when it came the time for him to write a commentary on the Brahma Sutra, he didn't just sit down and utilize his scholarship. From the core of his heart, he prayed to the Supreme Personality of God in Govinda. Please, you are the source of all knowledge. Please empower me. He prayed to his spiritual master, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And due to his prayers to his spiritual master, Govinda spoke the commentary to him. And afterward, he gave all credit to his guru. He did not try to present himself as a great author. I'm simply an instrument. I prayed, I was empowered, and all credit belongs to Guru and Krishna. And last night's drama concluded with Srila Prabhupada boarding the Jaladut. He said, Mahajana Kadasa Panta. The path of perfection is to follow in the footsteps of the great souls. This is what all great souls do. They take no credit for themselves. They give it all to where they received it from. Srila Prabhupada, what he did, on that Jaladuta boat, he prayed from the core of his heart to his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, and to Krishna. I only want to be your puppet. Make me dance. I have no knowledge. I have no devotion. I have no capacity to reach these people who I don't even know who I'm going to meet. He was going into a foreign land. He had no idea who he was going to encounter. He had no idea what they were like. Living in Vrindavan, he never heard of what a hippie was. He had no idea about the revolution that was going on between the older generation and the younger generation. He had no idea what television shows or what music was influencing people's lives. All he knew was his guru asked him to go. And he was praying from his heart, helplessly. And after a very short time, what was historical success? Young people who never heard the name Krishna in their lives were surrendering their lives to Krishna and giving up everything for that purpose. All over the world. Nobody else had ever done this. But Srila Prabhupada kept no credit for himself. Always, he gave all credit to his spiritual master. He gave all credit to the previous acharyas, whose books he had gained so much knowledge from. He gave all credit to his disciples, who were helping very sincerely. He kept no credit for himself. That is greatness. Now, amongst people who actually have some real culture and knowledge and some spiritual substance, they will never, ever, ever be impressed by somebody who's boasting about what they have done. It's not enlightening. It's depressing. One sadhu once told me that when you brag about something you've done good, then in the process of bragging, you're exhausting the credits of what you've done. You're losing it all. You just keep quiet. It stays with you. Foolish people will adore you for talking about what you've done. But people who are close to God, they will pity you. It is a fact. They will adore you. They will honor you and respect you from their heart of hearts when they see you give credit to others. Because that is greatness. Greatness is not what you do. Greatness is how you're an instrument in the hands of God. Whether you convince 100,000 people, or whether you pluck a few petals from a flower. If Krishna sees our sincerity of purpose, he sees the humility of our heart, and Krishna will glorify us. Krishna will exalt us. In the Bible it is said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed is the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This is a universal spiritual principle. If we feel ourselves poor, then we have access to all the wealth of the kingdom of God. If we feel ourselves meek, then the Lord will give us the greatest of the opulences of the world. But if we are proud, then spiritually we are in poverty. And we have no access to the gifts of God, the real gifts of God. So, in today's verse, Vishwarupa is teaching the demigods how to be protected from lusty desires. I'm not going to ask if any of you have this problem. There's no need for raising hands or I see it's understood. This material world is a place where everyone is shackled and chained to one extent or another by lusty desires. There is gross lusty desires, where we want the satisfaction of sex life. We want the satisfaction of sensual interactions with objects. And then there is the soul sex life, which is profit, adoration, and distinction. It's the sex of the mind. It's profit, adoration, and distinction. People are very much addicted to these things. So we're being taught here, the Prabhupada explains, if you try to overcome Maya yourself, it's impossible. Maya is all powerful. And Kamadev was known as Cupid in the West. Very subtle and very gross, very everything. And those arrows are very sharp, very piercing. And the arrows are such those who had done it, then with their support, everything is possible. Sanat Kumar, as we read the history, it's amazing. Lord Brahma, Sanat, the four Kumars, Sanat, Sanat, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumar, are the oldest children of Brahma in this entire universe. They are the first sons. At the beginning of the creation, first Brahma creates the 5 types of ignorance, which include fear of death, fears and anxieties, and especially the misidentification that I am this body, which is the root of all ignorance. Why does Brahma first create ignorance? Because without it, nobody could live in this material existence. First, he has to create an environment that people can live in. If he just started creating population, nobody would come. Nobody would stay unless there was an environment that could support them. So what is that environment? Ignorance. Because we're all part and parcel of Krishna. We're all meant to be with God in the spiritual world. We're all meant to be humble, selfless servants of the Supreme Lord. We're all meant to love. No lust, only love. Only devotion. Only service. Only joy. Who in the world would want to stay in a place where there's pride and there's death and there's suffering? Who wants to come here? Who wants to stay here? Only someone who's in ignorance. Yes? So first he had to create ignorance in 5 varieties. Now there's a place that I can bring people into. But after creating ignorance, Brahma was very much unhappy by what he just did. Because he's a great devotee who only means the good for others. But this is his service. So he meditated, and he contemplated, and he tried to purify his own self from what he had just done. But then the setting was seen. The scene was set for creation. And the first children that came out of Brahma came from his mind in the form of the 4 Kumars. Now Brahma's particular position that he was given by the Lord was to procreate population within this universe. Now Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, from the highest planet in this material existence, down to the lowest, they're all places of suffering. Because ultimately, you have to grow old, get disease, and die. And we don't know, at any least expected moment, some calamity can come upon us. That's the way the world is created. Now why would an eternal soul want to stay in such a place? They have to be ignorant. Lord Chaitanya said, Godhead is light and Maya is darkness. Where there is Krishna, who is Godhead, there can be no darkness. The only way out of the darkness of this world is to take shelter of the Lord, who is the source of our life. We cannot do it on our own. Very crude, practical example. If you're in darkness, can you, without the help of something else, create light? Yes? Can you just say, let there be light? And all of a sudden the room is lit up? No. You need help. Either a match that somebody else made, coming from the elements of the earth, or you turn on a light switch, or you have a torch or something. You need something outside of yourself for light. Krishna is the source of all light. To get out of this darkness of ignorance or Maya, we need Krishna. So Brahma's duty is to create a population of people who want to be in this material world, who want to try to lord it over nature, who want to try to pretend that they are the controllers and they are God and that they are the enjoyers. And his duty is to create sons and daughters who will marry according to proper culture and procreate like anything. They're called Prajapatis. So the first Prajapatis that he gave birth to were the 4 Kumaras. And as soon as they came, he told them, now, multiply the population on earth. And the 4 Kumaras, can you imagine the opportunities they were given by their father? First, here in India and all over the world, the first son usually has a very special position in the inheritance of the father. Well, can you imagine being the first son of Brahma? That means everyone else in the creation of this universe is going to be your younger brothers and sisters, and you have to see your own sister. They had a lot of benefits if they just cooperated. So Brahma said, now, procreate, populate the world. They said, no, we'll have nothing to do with this procreation business. We have decided to join the Brahmacharya ashram. Can you imagine the type of beautiful, heavenly ladies that Brahma would have created for them to marry? Don't try to imagine. I'm asking you if you can imagine. You can. You can, but please don't. There is no beauty in this world that can compare to the heavenly beauty of the lovely damsels that Brahma was about to create for his 4 Kumaras to live with. They said no. Brahma would have given them magnificent planets with palatial buildings. They would accept anything. Brahmacharya means you own nothing. So they said, no. We want to focus our full attention on Brahman, on self-realization. We do not want to be distracted by all these worldly responsibilities. Now, Brahma was a great, great, great soul. He is one of the Guna avatars. He presides over the mode of passion. When you preside over the mode of passion, passion is within you. Now, Krishna tells in Gita, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, when passion is unfulfilled, what happens? fulfill our desires. And they are frustrated. We become angry. And what is the power of anger? You see, Prabhupada explains, sometimes the eyes become red, the heart begins to beat, the limbs begin to shake, and you say something that you may regret for the rest of your life. You may do things that are the very cause of your ruination, simply from a moment of anger. Relations are sometimes destroyed by just a moment of that flame of anger. In fact, in America, I know some people. You have heard of Alcoholics Anonymous? There is also Anger Anonymous. People who just can't control their anger. They just have desires and they're unfulfilled, or somebody just doesn't act the way you want them to act, and you just go wild. Sometimes they beat them, sometimes they scream at them, sometimes they demoralize them. Anger is a very powerful weapon of Maya, illusion. Now, Lord Brahma became angry at his own sons because he had a job to do and he expected his sons to take over the business, to help him. But his son says, no, we're going to be brahmacharis. We don't want to be diverted with all of these illusions. But Lord Brahma, when he was angry, he didn't show any anger. Because he was a cultured person, he restrained it. He remained completely sober. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, he didn't spank them. He just tolerated it. But that passion had to come out in some way. So it came out from between his eyebrows. And his personality appeared, who had a bluish-red complexion. Because red is the color of passion, and blue is the color of ignorance. And anger is a mixture of passion and ignorance. And who was that personality? The second-born son of Brahma, as a result of his anger for his first sons? Rudra, Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is an eternal personality, an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in this particular instance, this is how he was born within this material universe that we're living. And he took presiding over the Tamaguna, the whole universe of creation. The four Kumaras were so powerful that they decided this lust is a big problem. Very, very difficult to overcome. Such a powerful force. But it only sets in when you reach puberty. Yes? When you become an adolescent. And all of a sudden, this mysterious fire just starts burning within you. You don't know where it's coming from, where it's going. You become like a puppet of material nature through the strings of passion. Some of you may have that experience sometime in your life. But children, lust is dormant within them. It doesn't manifest until their body is equipped to fulfill those desires. That's why children are so innocent. They may have these desires from previous lives, but they don't manifest until their body is equipped to fulfill those desires. So children are very, very innocent. They don't have those desires. Just like that story of Sati Anusuya near Chitrakoot. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. They heard their wives, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati, discuss who is the most chaste of all women. And Narada Muni came. And they asked, who do you think is the most chaste of all women? said, Manasuya. Manasuya, wife Bhakti Rishi, lives on earth. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva went to test what is the nature of her chastity. So they played a good trick. Because they came at a time when Atri Muni was not there. He was taking a bath in the Ganges somewhere. So they came to the scene. And chastity means a lot of things. One principle of chastity is to properly serve a guest and fulfill their desires. The day before yesterday in that drama about Nilma Mangala Thakur, absolutely fantastic historical drama. We saw how that Brahmin man, even though Lila Sukha came and asked for his wife, he had such a culture that you cannot refuse a guest. So what did they, she greeted them, brought them in the house. How can I serve you? They said, we're hungry, bring us prasad. She said, I will. I said, but there's one condition. You have to bring the prasad with no clothes on. Now, for a woman to be undressed in front of any man except her husband is considered unchaste. But not to fulfill the desire of a guest is also considered unchaste. Sometimes this world is very complex. Now, what would you do? Would you take your clothes off and serve three? And they were not dressed as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. They were dressed as sadhus. Yes, would you just take your clothes off, serve sadhus? Unless you were a Naga Babaji. Probably would not want to do that. At the same time, you have to please your guest. So by her mystic power, she knew the whole science. She transformed Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva into three small little children, babies. Because babies cannot understand the difference between male and female and all these things. They can have no desires. So she changed them into little babies, then she took off her clothes and served them. Simple solution. But they fell in love with her as a mother, and she fell in love with them as children, so they didn't change back. Ultimately, after a long time, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati came to Chitrakoot area, to the bank of the Mandakini Ganga, and said, we want our husbands back. She said, husbands? What do you mean husbands? 3 people came. Didn't 3 people come here? I said, yes. We want to see them. They haven't come back. I said, oh, there they are. They saw their husbands as little babies. Hey, please, you are the most chaste. No one is more chaste than you. Give us our husband back. By her power, she gave them their original forms. And they said, you took care of us so nicely, we want to give you any benediction. She said, I love you as my children. Please take birth as my children. Dattatreya, Soma, and Durvasmuni were all born as the children of Atri Muni and Anasuya. And while we're on the topic of Soma, my dear godbrother Soma was also here. It's one of the Prabhupada's very devout disciples. And we also have Sukama Devi and Rasa Viva Devi, Sukama Devi mother of Garuda Kishore Prabhu. Who is one of the world's favorite brahmacharis, following in the footsteps of the Kumaras.